Hello, how are you guys doing? How did your day go today? Hope you had a great day. Hope you had a great day. Hope everything went according to plan. All right, it's that time again where we come together and have a nice talk. I do hope to get everything set up as we get prepared. So, with everything running, whoa, I know we still in the middle of the series, right? We're doing a series. But this talk right now is not about that. It's about something that happened. So I want to talk to you today or tonight from a place that is very real to me. I had a gig a couple of days with a company to speak to some of their salespeople. And one of the things we got into during the conversation really, it stayed with me, it stayed in my spirit, it stayed in my mind, it stayed with me even after the meeting was over. And I knew immediately after the meeting, that this is not just something for that room, that I had to bring it here to my YouTube family. This is something I need to say to this community, not just that room. Because I heard the line that really struck me and it stayed. The line was basically this. Okay, this is it. Gone are the days when wealth belongs only to the specialist. Gone are the days when the person who knows one thing and only one thing and does only that one thing is automatically the one who wins. Gone are the days when your specialty equals to what happens. In this age, especially in the time we find ourselves right now. Hello, Richard Nelson. How are you? In this age of AI, the person who wins is not the one that is the specialist. It's actually the person who wins now is the one who can learn very quickly, unlearn very quickly, relearn very quickly, adapt very quickly, shift very quickly, and keep moving. When we had that talk, I said, wow. Because, see, whether you agree with every word of it or not, there is a truth inside that statement, and we cannot ignore it. We cannot ignore it. We're living in a time where your greatest asset may no longer be just what you know, it may be how fast you can learn. How willing are you to let go of what used to work? How humble are you enough to admit that the old version of you cannot carry the new season of your life? How quickly can you adapt without losing yourself? This is what I want to talk about tonight. Tonight, friends, I want to talk about the power of becoming a person who can learn, unlearn, and relearn. And hey, I'm not talking about it because it sounds clever or because it sounds modern, not because it sounds like one of all those AI buzzwords. No, but because some of us are suffering right now, not from lack of potential, but from attachment. We are attached to old methods. We are attached to old identities. We are attached to old titles. We are attached to old definition of success. Attached to the comfort of what we already know. And some of you, if you are honest with yourself, you are not stuck because you're not gifted. You're stuck because you're still trying to win today's battle with yesterday's mindset. Friends, that will wear you out. It will wear you out. It will frustrate you. That will make it will make you feel like life is unfair. When the truth is not always that life is unfair, sometimes the truth is that life has moved on. And you refuse to move on with life. You refuse to catch up with life. Life moved on. And I know that it may sound a little bit hard, but I need to say it with love tonight. Because this is not a message with about condemning anybody. No. This is a message about waking somebody up. This is about waking somebody from slumber. This is somebody listening to me right now is more capable than the results you're getting. You're more capable than the results you're producing. You're smarter than what your current life is showing. You're more adaptable than what fear has allowed you to prove. You're more relevant than you even think. But your next level will not come from clinging harder to what you used to know, what you used to be. It will come from being teachable again. Tonight, I want to challenge you with this thought. Maybe your future does not belong to the person who knows the most. Maybe your future belongs to the person who can become new the fastest. Pause with me for a second, okay? Just pause with me. We're just starting. We're just starting. Because this is a very heavy thought. So I want you to really, really land. Maybe your future belongs to the version of you that is not too proud to start over. Not too proud to ask questions. Not too proud to learn a tool. Not too proud to sit in a room with younger people and not feel threatened. Not too proud to say, well, I have been doing this for 20 years, but I can see that the world is changing and I need to grow. That kind of humility is power. That kind of humility is not weakness. That kind of humility is how people stay alive in changing times. And I want to tell you this tonight. There are people who are not more talented than you. There are people who are not more disciplined than you. They're not even more visionary than you. They are just more willing to be beginners again. That is it. That is it. They're willing to look awkward again. They're willing to ask the foolish questions again. They're willing to be corrected again. They're willing to let go of outdated advantage again. They are willing to become uncomfortable again. And because of that, they keep growing while others keep defending an old version of themselves. I need somebody in this live tonight to hear me and hear me clearly. And those that are going to watch this replay later. Your refusal to relearn is not loyalty. It may be fear. Your refusal to change is not always wisdom. Sometimes it is insecurity. Your attachment to being the expert may be the very thing keeping you from becoming exceptional in this next era. Friends, the world we are right now is moving at a very rapid pace. Technology is moving fast. Business is moving fast. Communication is moving fast. Opportunities are moving fast. You can sleep and wake up and an entire industry has been reshaped in real time. It's not about we're discussing how to reshape. In real time, it's happening before your eyes. A whole industry is being reshaped. And in the middle of all of that, many people are still asking the wrong questions. They're asking the wrong, in the middle of all this change that is going on, people are still asking the wrong question. They keep asking questions like, how do I protect what I already know? When, see, a better question should have been, how do I become the kind of person who can keep learning no matter what changes? That is the shift. That is the mindset. That is the new survival skill in this jungle. And let me say this carefully because I do not want somebody to misunderstand me because this topic can be easily misunderstood. This is not an attack on specialists. No, because I'm a specialist myself. There's still tremendous value in depth. There's still a lot of value in mastery. And there's still tremendous value in being excellent at something. Okay? But the problem is when your specialization becomes a prison. The problem is when you know one thing so well that you stop being able to see anything else. You create a whole funnel, a siloed view. The problem is when you become so identified with one lane that you panic when life asks you to shift. The problem is when your knowledge becomes rigid instead of alive. What we need now is not shallow people who know a little about everything and nothing deeply. No. What we need now are people with enough depth to be useful and enough flexibility to evolve, to change. That is a different. That is a sweet spot. You may have a core strength. I respect that. You may have a primary gift. Granted. You may have a main profession. I respect that. But around that, you must build adaptability. You must build curiosity. You must build range. You must build responsiveness. You must build courage. You must build the inner ability to say, I can learn what I need to learn for where I am going. That sentence alone can change somebody's life. I can learn what I need to learn for where I am going. I can outgrow what I used to know. I can release what no longer works. I can update my mind. I can expand my capacity. I can stop romanticizing old seasons. I can become new. And for some of you, this is a word tonight. Become new. Not fake, not unstable, not scattered, new. There's a difference. Some people are scattered because they chase everything. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about becoming the kind of person whose mind stays alive, whose mind stays active, whose spirit stays alive. Your curiosity stays alive. Your courage stays alive. Your willingness to grow stays alive. Because one of the most dangerous things that can happen to a human is not getting old, it's getting fixed. It's getting mentally fixed, emotionally fixed, professionally fixed, spiritually fixed. It's becoming the kind of person who no longer examine themselves, who no longer question themselves, who no longer update themselves. That kind of rigidity will break you in a changing world, especially in the world that we are today. And let me make this very personal tonight. Some of you are frustrated because the world does not reward you the way it used to. And I understand that pain. You worked hard to become very good at something. You're the mechanic down the street that fixes Mercedes Benz. And everybody knows about you with Mercedes Benz. You built your identity around competence. You spent years developing a craft. And now the world is shifting. And suddenly you've been asked to learn again. That thing can feel insulting. That can feel exhausting. That can feel unfair. But hear me carefully, my friends. Hear me, listen. Being asked to grow again is not an insult. It is an invitation. It is life saying there is more in you than this current version. It is life saying you're not finished yet. It is life saying do not confuse your past success with your final form. You're not your final form. You're not finished. You're not done. You're not complete. You're not caged. You're not capped. But if you keep worshiping the version of you that used to work, the version of you that used to be the specialist, the version of you that used to be the expert, you may never meet the version of you that is meant to win now in this changing world. And in this age of technology, in this age of AI, this message matters even more. Because AI is not just changing tools, it is changing expectations. It is changing speed. It is changing access. It is changing workflows. It is changing what average looks like. And it is also changing what high performance looks like. Things that used to take hours can now take minutes. Things that used to require a whole team can now be started by one person with the right tools. Things that used to be rare knowledge are now becoming widely accessible. What does that mean? It means your value cannot only be, I know something others do not know. Because increasingly, information is available now. Everybody's got it on his palm. The question is becoming, can you think? Can you adapt? Can you discern? Can you connect ideas? Can you lead change? Can you learn faster than fear? Can you keep your humanity while upgrading your capacity? That is the real question. And people who will thrive are not necessarily the loudest. No, they're not necessarily the most credentialed. They're not even necessarily the most polished. They will be the people who keep renewing themselves, renewing the way they think, renewing the way they work, renewing the way they communicate, the way they solve problems, renewing the way they see the world. Tonight, I need somebody to stop mourning the old game. I need somebody to start learning the new game. Because some of you are still grieving a version of work, a version of opportunity, a version of status, a version of relevance that is not coming back. And while you're mourning the old game, somebody else is learning the new one. While you're offended by change, somebody else is studying change. While you're complaining about disruption, somebody else is building with it. While you're defending your old title, You used to be the expert on the block. Somebody else is quietly increasing their range. They're taking your customers. They're building value. They're going to take your money. And 5 years later, you will be one of those that say, oh, they got lucky. No, they didn't get lucky. They got flexible. They got flexible. They got teachable. They got adaptive. They got moving. They didn't stop. And maybe this is the word for you tonight. Move. Move your mind. Move your habits. Move your assumptions. Move your methods. Move. Move your ego out of the way. Move your fear out of the center. Move your excuses off the throne. Move. Because your future may be waiting on the other side of your willingness to evolve. Your future may be waiting on the other side of your willingness to change. Now, let me slow down and make this human. Because I know some people hear a message like this and immediately they feel pressure. They feel like they have to know everything, like they have to become everything, like they have to reinvent themselves overnight. If you know me, you know my channel. We talk like this every day. So I always say, you don't have to reinvent yourself now, overnight. People hear things like this and they feel like they have to be an expert in 10 different fields tomorrow morning. No, 1,000 times no. That's not what I'm saying. That is not about big. See, the whole idea here is not so that you become frantic. And this is not about running after every trend. You're not a trend chaser. This is not about being shallow and calling it versatility. This is about becoming someone who is never beyond learning. That is it. Some of the most dangerous words a person can say are, this is just who I am. Oh, I've heard that so many times on this channel. Hey, Matt, I can't change anymore. This is just who I am. Somebody say, that's just how we've always done it. That's a dumb statement. It means don't think. You're a robot. Just do it this way. Or somebody say, I'm not good with that kind of thing. Who told you? Everything is learned. Everything is learned. Make yourself teachable. Or somebody say, I'm too old to learn that. I've heard this on this channel so many times. Some people say, hey, Matt, I wish I met you 5 years ago. Now I'm 65. Now I'm 55. I say, hey, this is the right time for you, my friend. This is the right time for you. I wish Colonel Sanders said, oh, I'm old now. We won't be having KFC the way it is. Maybe, of course, we have chicken. We have other recipes. But the KFC crunchy style that fills the mouth with joy, we won't be having that if he had said he was too old. Another dumb statement you hear is, that's for younger generation. Who told you that? You're still living? You're here now. Somebody said, that's not my area, you know. Matt, I don't like AI. Let me tell you, AI is going to change the job of a lawyer. It's actually changing it. So you don't have to be in IT to like it. Be careful with those sentences. Be careful. Because sometimes what sounds like self-awareness is actually self-limitation. Sometimes what sounds like maturity is actually resignation. Sometimes what sounds like stability is actually fear wearing a respectable suit with a tie on it. And I want to say this with love tonight. Because many people have buried themselves alive inside a fixed identity. I'm just this kind of person. I only do this kind of work. I'm only built for this kind of environment. I can't change now. I can't start now. I can't adapt now. And I want to ask you tonight, who told you that? Who convinced you that growth has an expiration date? Who convinced you that you have to stay the same to be authentic? Who convinced you that learning again is beneath you? Who convinced you? Hello, Nancy. Who convinced you that starting over in one area cancel your wisdom in another area? Who told you that? Because that belief is too expensive. It is costing people opportunities. It is costing people confidence. It is costing people income. It is costing people influence, even relevance, peace. And some of you are paying with your future just to protect your pride. That is too expensive. Your pride is too expensive. Your ego is too expensive. You need to look established, it's too expensive. There are rooms you cannot enter if you need to always be the smartest person there. There are seasons you cannot survive if you need to always feel in control. There are opportunities you cannot step into if you need certainty before movement. And maybe tonight, part of your breakthrough is going to be learning how to become a student again. Maybe tonight, you need to learn how to be teachable, not just in school, not just in career, in life. Oh, Nancy said, "Are you a Christian?" Of course I am. You need to be a student again in how you listen, a student again in how you think, in how you relate, in how you build, in how you lead. Because the strongest people in this era, in this day, are not those who know everything. They are those who know how to keep learning, unlearning, and relearning. That is the strength. And let me tell you something else. To learn, unlearn, and relearn is not just a professional skill, it is an emotional skill. Because sometimes the hardest thing to unlearn is not a method, it's a belief. Sometimes the hardest thing to unlearn is not a tool, it's a story you've been telling yourself. The story that says, I missed my time. I'm too far behind. Everyone else is ahead. I'm not technical enough. I'm not creative enough. I'm not young enough. I'm not connected enough. I'm not capable enough. Sometimes what you need to unlearn is your own inner defeat. Sometimes what you need to relearn is hope. Sometimes what you need to relearn is courage. Sometimes what you need to relearn is confidence. Sometimes what you need to relearn is how you believe in your capacity again. Because let me tell you what I've seen in life. A lot of people do not fail because they lack intelligence. They fail because they stop believing they can change. And once a person stops believing they can change, they stop trying deeply. They stop stretching, they stop risking. They stop asking questions, they stop exploring. They stop becoming. Because why? They're tired. And tonight, I want to speak to that tired person too. The tired person. The person who had to survive a lot. The person who already reinvented themselves before. The person who feels exhausted at the thought of having to adapt again. I understand that. This message is not meant to shame your fatigue. It is meant to remind you of your capacity. You've changed before. You've seen this cycle before. You've learned before. You've adjusted before. You've survived before. You've stretched before. There is more elasticity in you than your discouragement is letting you see. Do not let exhaustion define your identity. Rest if you need to. You always hear me say that on this channel. Rest if you need to. Pause if you need to. Recover if you need to. But do not decide that because this season is demanding, you're no longer capable of growth. That is not true. You're still capable. You're still able. You're still breathing so you can become. And I want to say this to somebody who's listening in silence tonight. Your life may change the moment you stop asking, what if I can't? And you start asking, what would happen if I am really committed to learning this? That question changes everything. What would happen if I'm really committed? What would happen if I stop judging myself so early? What will happen if I give myself 6 serious months? What will happen if I stopped romanticizing perfection and start building capacity? What would happen if I become consistent instead of intimidated? What will happen? Because many people never discover what is possible, not because it is impossible or it was impossible, but because they withdrew too early. They withdrew too early, too soon, too quickly. They saw one awkward moment and they say, this is not for me. They're gone. They saw one confusion and they said, I can do this. They're out. They saw one younger person moving faster and they said, I'm behind. They saw one tool that felt unfamiliar and they said, this world has passed me by. No, my friend, 1,000 times no. Do not surrender that fast. Do not hand your future over so easily. Give yourself the dignity of effort. Give yourself the dignity of growth. Give yourself the dignity of not deciding your ceiling before life has even tested your real capacity. It matters. It matters. Now, let me bring this back to the core of this message. The reason this matters so much in this age is that we're no longer in an era where one fixed identity can serve most people for life. That word is fading, if it's not even faded. That word now is asking, can you transition? Can you synthesize? Can you connect disciplines? Can you move from one context to another? Can you see patterns? Can you interpret signals? Can you update your methods? Can you reinvent the way you create value? This is where the edge is now. Not just in depth, but in adaptive depth. Not just in knowledge, but in living knowledge, knowledge that is alive. Not just in expertise, but in evolving expertise. That's what I want for you. I do not want you shallow. I want you alive. I do not want you scattered. I want you responsive. I do not want you trend chasing. I want you growth ready. There's a difference, a huge difference. And maybe one of the reasons many people feel overwhelmed by AI, overwhelmed by change, overwhelmed by this era is because they're still trying to preserve an old identity instead of building a new relationship with learning. That is what needs to change. Do not build your identity around staying the same. Build your identity around being teachable. That is safer, that is stronger, that is more future proof. If your identity is I am the expert, you will panic when the landscape shifts. But if your identity is I am a learner, then change becomes less threatening. Because the learner says, I may not know this yet, but I can learn. I may not be skilled at using these machines yet, but I can study, I can practice. I may not understand this yet, but I can study. I may not be comfortable yet, but I can adapt. That mindset will take you far. And in this era of change, in this era of technology, in this era of AI, that mindset will take you far. Now, let me say something very practical. For many of you, the next season of your life may not require you to abandon your current strengths. No, it may require you to build on them. You do not have to throw your whole life away because things are changing. You do not have to disrespect your experience. You do not have to become someone else entirely. But you need, or you may need to ask, what is adjacent to what I already know? What skills sits beside my current skill? What technology is reshaping my field? What language do I need to learn? What tool can make me more effective, more efficient? What mental model do I need to update? What old assumption is slowing me down? This is how growth becomes practical. Not chaos, not panic, not random reinvention, intentional expansion. That is the phrase, intentional expansion. And I really believe somebody listening to me tonight is being called into intentional expansion. Not because you were wrong before, I'm not saying that, but because there's more that is required now. Not because your old self was useless, no, but because your new season is asking for more capacity. Not because you failed, never, but because the terrain changed. That's not a personal insult, that is reality. And mature people do not take reality personally, they learn from it. Let me say that again. Mature people do not take reality personally, they learn from it. The market changed, learn. Technology changed, learn. The workplace is changing, learn. The communication style is changing, learn. The opportunity structure is changing, learn. Do not just complain, learn. Do not just resist, learn. Do not just grieve, learn. Because learning is one of the most powerful forms of self-respect in a changing world. It is you telling yourself, I refuse to become irrelevant by accident. I refuse to become bitter by attachment. I refuse to become fragile because I worship familiarity. I refuse to stay trapped in old competence with new possibilities passing me by. That is power. And for those of you who lead people, this matters even more. If you lead people, this matters more. Because leadership in this era is not just about having answers anymore. It's about creating a culture of learning, a culture where people can ask, where they can test, where they can improve, where they can rethink, where they can adapt and grow. If you lead with ego, people will hide what they do not know. If you lead with curiosity, people will grow. If you punish people for not knowing everything immediately, you will create fear. If you create an environment where learning is honored, you will create capacity. That also matters in families, it matters in business, it matters in teams, it matters in communities. And maybe this is why this message is not just about money, it is about posture, the posture of your life. Are you rigid or responsive? Are you defensive or teachable? Are you fixed or you're growing? Are you preserving an image or building a future? That is the real question. And I want to bring this back to the heart now. Because behind all of this talk about learning, unlearning, and relearning is a deeper emotional challenge. It is a challenge of letting go. A lot of people do not struggle to learn because they lack intelligence. They struggle to learn because learning something new forces them to release something old, release an identity, release a status, release an image, release a comfort zone, release a version of themselves that they once kept safe. And letting go is hard. Letting go is hard, especially when you're letting go of something that once worked, when you're letting go of what brought you praise, when you're letting go of something that made you feel valuable, when you're letting go of something that once gave you certainty. But hear me tonight, friends. A thing can be good for a season and still become a limitation in another season. That is not betrayal, that is growth. You're allowed to outgrow what once helped you. You're allowed to revise what once served you. You're allowed to move beyond what once defined you. That is not instability, that is maturity. And there's somebody listening tonight who needs permission to stop clinging to a formal version of themselves. You keep trying to force your future to honor your past in exactly the same way. But your future may require a different expression of your gift, a broader expression, a deeper expression, a more flexible expression. And if you keep demanding that growth looks familiar, you may reject the very transformation you are praying for. Some people are praying for expansion while resisting the learning that expansion requires. They want the new season without the new mindset. They want the new result without the new discipline. They want the new opportunity without the new humility. It does not work like that. The new season has a language, learn it. The new season has tools, learn it. The new season has demand, prepare for them. The new season has a version of you attached to it, become that person. And tonight, I want you to hear this clearly. You do not need to know everything today. You just need to become a person who keeps moving towards growth. That is enough. One lesson at a time, one shift at a time, one book at a time, one tool at a time, one conversation at a time, one uncomfortable step at a time. You build a new life, one act of humility at a time. And maybe this is the simplest way I can say what I want to say tonight. The future belongs to the humble learner. Not the loudest person, not the proudest person, not the most rigid person. The humble learner. The person who says, I can improve. I can update, I can rethink, I can stretch, I can evolve, I can begin again. That person is dangerous in the best way because you cannot trap them in one era. You cannot lock them in one method. You cannot destroy them with one disruption. You cannot bury them under one shift in the market. Why? Because they know how to become. They know how to become. And I think that may be one of the greatest skill anybody can develop in this generation. The ability to become. Not just to achieve, not just to perform, not just to maintain, to become wiser, to become broader, to become more capable, to become more discerning, to become more useful, to become more courageous. That is the journey. So tonight, I want to leave you with a challenge. Audit your life. Where are you still defending an old version of yourself? Where are you still hiding behind what you already know? Where are you calling it wisdom when it is really avoidance? Where have you decided you're done growing? Be honest, because that honesty may be the beginning of your next season. And then, after you're honest, do something simple. Choose one area where you become a student again. Maybe it's technology, maybe it's communication, maybe it's leadership, business, maybe it's even AI, maybe it's discipline. But choose one area and then commit. Not emotionally, practically, commit to learning, commit to studying, commit to testing, commit to asking questions, commit to staying in discomfort long enough to become competent. That's how lives change. Not through inspiration alone, not through motivation alone, but through sustained teachability. And that's what I want for you, my friend. I do not just want you inspired tonight. I want you repositioned. I want you to walk away from this life saying, I will not let this era intimidate me. I will not let change paralyze me. I will not let my old identity imprison me. I will not let pride make me outdated. I'll become a learner again. I will learn, unlearn, relearn, and keep moving. That is a talk tonight. And if you needed this, if this resonates with you, if this woke something up with you, it woke something up in you, I want you not to sit on this. Please share it with somebody else. Share it with somebody in your world. You may just be a lifesaver. And for somebody listening tonight, that one decision may change your future more than you know. Because in a changing world, the greatest security is not what you already know, it is who you are willing to become. Thank you so much, guys, for your time. This is what we spoke about today in the session, and I knew I had to bring it here. Work with it, think about it, pray about it, act on it, and remember the world may keep changing. But if you remain teachable, you do not have to be afraid of change. You can always meet change. Oh, you can always meet it. You can learn it. You can learn change. You can ride the wave of change. You can ride the wave of change. And when you ride the wave of change, you will grow through it. You will look like the surfer that understands the wave. When change is coming, you know what to expect. You know what to do. And you can still build something meaningful with your life. Thank you so much, guys. God bless you. Talk to you some other time. Bye for now. And if you've not subscribed, kindly hit the subscribe button so that you know when we go live. Peace.